Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Self-Published Success, a show that highlights forward-thinking authors who chose self-publishing over traditional and found success in doing so. My name is John Feldman, founder and CEO of Visionary Literary, and your host for today's show. Our guest today is Sean Tyler Foley. Tyler is an accomplished film and stage performer who has been acting in film and TV since he was 6 years old. Tyler has appeared in productions including Freddy vs. Jason, Door to Door, Carrie, and the musical Ragtime. He is a veteran podcast guest with over 300 appearances on episodes with topics ranging from leadership to safety to overcoming adversity. He is currently the author of #1 best-selling book, The Power to Speak Naked, and the managing director of Total Buy-In, where he works with executives and CEOs, helping them to show up powerfully behind the mic to gain the exposure they need. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Oh, John, it's my pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to this. I love what you're doing with both your company and this podcast, and I'm excited to be able to contribute.
Good. Well, thank you. Yes, when we first came in contact, it was very enthusiastic, and I'm very appreciative of the enthusiasm and for you being here. So I want to just kick off the show by asking you to dive more into your background, tell the listeners who you are.
Yeah, I am, as you'd mentioned, a published author, former child actor, but above all else, I am a father, a husband, a son, a seeker of warm beaches, lover of fine chocolate, and just general entertainer and, and fun party host.
Good. Well, I love that. I love the entertainer part because today we're going to obviously get into entertaining, but also educating. So, um, sticking with entertaining before we get into educating, your background as a child actor and as an actor, I have to ask, any cool stories, any Hollywood stories, New York City celebrity stories that you can tell us?
Yeah, the one of my favorites. Yeah, I have two really fun gigs on my resume. You know, anybody who searches the IMDb page and sees Freddy versus Jason's usually the one that people gravitate to, and that was really cool. I grew up watching horror films. I remember my cousin Pam, when I was like 8 years old, had a tape of I think Nightmare on Elm Street 4, like Dream Child, I think was that.
Yeah.
And and being just putting it on, and like I'm 8, and it was terrifying but exhilarating at the same time because we weren't supposed to be watching the video, but she had it, and we were, you know, having to sleep over, and so the hit on went the VHS, and I became obsessed with the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and went back and watched the original one when I was a little bit older, probably like 12 or 13, and then just it was just a huge fan. So to get to be cast in Freddy versus Jason and getting to meet Robert Eglund and getting to see like the property master bring him the glove and getting to watch him put it on, and like even being in the makeup trailer with him. I remember being in the makeup trailer, and Robert comes in and Freddy goes out, and watching them apply that makeup was one of the biggest thrills of my life. And then one of my other favorite was when I got to do Door to Door. It was with William H. Macy and Dame Helen Mirren, and getting to meet Bill was really cool, but getting to meet Helen was just this joyful treat. She is just such an absolute gem of a human being, let alone a performer. And we filmed this movie, and I'm a day player. Like, I'm only there for a day. It was a really fun experience though, because it was the first time I really felt like a movie star. I Even though I was just a day player, I had this double wide trailer that they gave me. It had like a separate bedroom and bathroom and like this huge ensuite with like couches and chairs. I was able to bring a whole bunch of my friends on to set, and my girlfriend was there, and like it was a cool experience. Had my name on the back of my set chair and stuff like that. which is rare for a day player. That you don't normally get that kind of treatment. But Bill was both a performer in it and an executive producer, and so he treated everybody really, really well. The highlight was not the filming of it, but later when Helen got nominated for a Golden Globe for it, um, the clip that they played at the awards show was the clip between me, her, and Bill. And so my phone blew up. Everybody's like, "What are you doing at the Golden Globe?" It's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then I clued in, and it was pretty cool
How
actually.
cool is that? That is a
Oh
very,
yeah.
very cool experience. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing those. As a my writing career started as a screenwriter, and I moved to Los Angeles for 1 month and 1 day, and then I came back because I ran out of money. But that was my goal when I was younger, was to be a screenwriter. So I always envisioned being on set and having those kind of experiences. So hearing those
Yeah.
stories to me um, just puts an extra large smile on my face. I love to hear it.
Oh yeah. No, it was there. It's definitely a highlight, and one that I'm very blessed and grateful to have had the time in the industry that I did.
Good. So you had that time, you had those experiences and those stories that you'd be able to tell forever. But
Mhm.
now you kind of move on to something else. So you move into public speaking and to authoring a book because of that. So first, the public speaking. What was the, I guess, what and why the transition from the, acting? Obviously, we know why, because acting is probably very, very difficult to make a very good living in. But um, why the transition and when did it happen?
Well, I've been public speaking basically all my life because I started on stage at 6, and I've been acting professionally since I was 7 years old. So the um, public speaking has just kind of been a thing that I've always done. Like even going through elementary school, I used to compete at the Kiwanis Festival for uh, in spoken word. So I would, perform poems and things like that. Um, and on a provincial and national level, I'd go to nationals for spoken word, and it said that I've been doing it for a very long time, and it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I realized that it could actually be a career. So, when you start performing, especially when you've been doing it professionally at a very young age, that's just kind of a thing. And so that was my vocation for 20 years, and it was actually not. And I'm privileged in that it wasn't difficult for me, because there are people who struggle, and they
Yes.
struggle a lot. And I never really did experience that. It's always been, I was a professional working actor right up until 25, 26 years old when I chose to retire. I had actually become really complacent with the craft. And I distinctly remember the day that I knew that I needed to step back from acting. I had done an audition and was on my way back to where I lived. And I lived in the interior of British Columbia because I performed in Canada and acted in Vancouver. And my house was in a beautiful place, Penticton. And it's about 3.5, 4 hours from Vancouver. And you have to drive through a national park that has zero cell reception. And I was literally about 5 minutes to the park, just outside of a community called Hope, BC, on the Trans Canada Highway, and just about to detour into the park, and literally about to lose cell reception. And I was just coming from an audition that I'd done, and my agent phoned, and she was like, "They want to see you for a callback." And I was like, "Great, when?" And she goes, "Right now." And in my heart, I was like, "Oh God, do I have to go back?" Right? I was, and the other thing is too, is it's literally at the halfway point. Like you're halfway there. And I'm like, now I have to turn around. I have to get to the studio. I'm going to have to find parking. Ugh. And as soon as I realized just how complacent I'd become, because most actors would die, they would crawl over broken glass for a year just to get a call. I mean, never mind the audition, like a call back. They want to see you again. And the stupid thing is, I ended up booking the role. And so I knew at that point that there were other people who were hungrier than me, that wanted it more than me, that I'd done my 20 years, and it was probably time to move on. So I decided to go back to school, get an engineering discipline, start my own company. That company failed. And in the process of it all, I'd gotten all of this safety training because what I did for business was photogrammetry. So anybody who's ever turned on satellite view in Google on Google Maps, I made those maps. That's what I did. I take out the 3D relief and you make these 2D picture maps. And that's what I went back and specialized in. That's what my company was. Unfortunately, the company failed. But when that's your primary um, business, your main client is the government, and the government insists that you have a safety program. So I'd had all this safety training, and a friend of mine who's a significantly better businessman than I am reached out to me and he said, "Listen, I've got this project and I need a safety officer. And if you take these couple of extra courses, you'll be an NCSO, National Construction Safety Officer. I'll pay for those courses and then you can come work for me." I said, "Sure, seems fine." Because I was lost when my business went under. I didn't know what to do. It was 3 years of my life, all of my savings, everything had gone into it. That was my retirement plan. And then when it failed, it it hit me hard. So Matt threw me a lifeline, and got to do that. And so I started doing this safety gig. And what I found out was, most of what I knew about safety I'd actually learned from film and television and doing stunts. And the next thing that I learned was, most of safety is not actually knowing about safety. Most of safety is being able to communicate ideas to people who don't agree with your opinion.
Hmm.
And I did that really, really well because of my acting background and my public speaking. And so I had a whole bunch of people who would reach out to me and they'd be like, "How do you do it? How do you make it like that?" That's the best safety meeting I've ever been to. And I can't believe I'm making that statement, because most safety meetings are an invitation to a lobotomy, right?
Right.
Like, you are asking to go. If you're not in a coma by the end of a safety meeting, you haven't attended a safety meeting.
Right.
So people were like, "How do you do it?" And I was like, "Oh, well, it's simple. You do this, this, this." And they're like, "Brilliant." And then they'd come back to me and give me this feedback. "That was great. And, I did this and everybody was happy." I was like, "Okay, cool. I'm glad that it worked." But eventually, um, higher level management from various organizations started reaching out to me. I started to get the reputation of somebody who could train well and provide really good presentations. And then the next thing I knew, I had these executives either asking me to help them train and become better speakers, and or asking to speak at their companies. And then from there, this whole speaking career evolved. I still remember being asked to do my first keynote presentation and having no idea what a keynote was. I agreed to it and then instantly got on the Googles and started figuring out what it was
Right.
that I had just agreed to. I'm like, am I being invited to the Pentaveret? Like, where am I at right now? Like, what's going on? And that really became the everything. That's how that started the book. That started the speaking career. That started the speaking career and the training career. And it's really been the push for the last 7 years is doing this full time.
Well, that's an incredible story, and it's funny because as soon as you said a few minutes ago that you were 7 years old and you're doing these public speaking things, and I'm thinking about me when I was seven, and I would have, most 7-year olds would clam up, they would turtle up and just be like, I'm not doing it. But the fact that, again, you have this experience and it has led you to the point where you get invited to be a keynote speaker without even knowing what keynote is. That's a very rare story to hear, but it is a good one. It shows that you are natural and you have that ability. So you're natural and you have this ability, and it's public speaking, and it's driving, your ability is driving exposure. People are reaching out to you, asking you for all different ways to help. Why the book?
Honestly, the book came about because my agent told me I needed one
Okay.
to write. Because it's one thing to be speaking on stages, and it sounds good when you're a keynote, but when you're a keynote for an organization of 500 or fewer employees, and it's because the CEO was at one of your training sessions and was like, "Hey, I like this guy, and I he could probably keep my my employees entertained for 45 minutes at our next AGM or safety stand down." It just evolved really quickly, but I knew that once I realized that I could make, what was at the time my month's salary in 45 minutes, I was hooked. I was like, well, why would I do anything else for one?
Yeah.
And because I've had representation most of my life in the form of an agent, I had no problem reaching out to agents, both literary agents and speaker agents and speaker bureaus. I've I'm so used to putting out a resume and a cover letter to 20 to 25 different people saying, "Will you take me on as a client?" and being rejected by 24 of the 25, that it's just no skin off my back at this point. So I'd gotten an amazing agent. My agent works so hard for me, and I love her to pieces. But she'd said to me, "Listen, you know, you're getting a really good reputation. People really enjoy having you, but I can't get you on to these bigger stages if you don't have a book." And I was like, "Well, like I'm not a writer. I don't want to write, right?" And so she was like, "Well, figure it out, because if you want the big stages, you're going to have a book. You've already got the training program to back it up, and that's the big step, because people are going to want you to be able to promote something from stage and sell from stage so that they get a back end kick, because that's really the key right now. And you've got a really good price point for what people are looking for. You're right in line with everything they need, but if you don't have the book, they're not going to put you on stage. You need the book just for credibility alone." And so I kind of went back with that, and I phoned a couple of people who are significantly smarter than me and talked to my team, and they were like, "Well, why don't we just transcribe the training program?" And I'm like, "Well, that's an idea." So that's what we did, because I've got hundreds and hundreds of hours of video of me delivering these training programs. And so we just transcribed the audio from the video, put it into a comprehensive volume, put it in an order that made sense, and voila, book. And it was, that was the easy process. Putting the book together was easy. It was all the rest of it that comes afterwards that was hard. But that's really what prompted it, was my agent saying, "You're not going to get on big stages if you don't have a book."
Well, that's very important because that's something again that we tell to public speakers constantly. If I'm ever in conversation that you have to, I've worked with public speakers before writing their books, and it's so important, especially for you. So you already have this background and this experience, and you already have, I guess, people raving about what you do on stage, but your agent still says, look, you have to have a book if you want to go to that next level. So that's very important for you being able to have all of that, all of the audio that you put together for your speaking gigs was helpful, because the first draft is usually where people are just like, I give up, because they're trying
Yeah.
to put all this information together, structure it in the right manner. But you were able to just take all of the information you had and transcribe it. So you did have a head start. But when one thing, so you went the traditional publishing route with this first book, correct? You reached out to
I
literary
know.
agents.
So that's the funny thing.
Okay.
This book has been both self-published and traditionally published. So what ended up happening was I self-published it first. I wanted to be in control of it, for one, and I knew the reason that I was publishing the book was not to get it in bookstores. The reason I was publishing the book was because it was essentially a business card that
Right.
I was going to give it to promoters, for one. I was going to bulk order it and then put it in the back of the room and sell it on sale. So like even the initial, you can, if people were to go online, they will often find two versions of it, because there's two ISBNs for it now. Um, and the one version is priced around like $28, which is absolutely ridiculous for the book, by the way, because I think it's 130 pages at most, like 120, 133. 133 pages is The Power to Speak Naked. And I had it priced at 28 specifically because then we were going to, put it on sale at the back of the room. So my book is $28 and it's printed on the back, and that's what it was. But we're going to give it to you for $20. Or, I've worked out a deal with the promoter. The promoter has, done this thing and has made it available for you for $10 at the back of the room. So if you want to go to the back of the room, $10, you can have the book. It's an $18 savings, and I'll even sign the thing for you. Made it for an easy pitch, right? So
Right.
it was
Right.
already ridiculously priced. Um, but it didn't need to be because I didn't need to sell it in bookstores. So there was a strategy behind the pricing.
Right.
What ended up happening was, and this is, I'm to this day, I'm amazed at how this happens. Life happens for you, not to you. Uh, I had met an incredible promoter, Gail Kingsbury, and she does, big stage stuff, has worked with some of the greats and giants in the industry. And uh, she was doing a thing, a very small 2.5 day training session with Les Brown. Les Brown, it was his event. He was the only speaker, and he was training other people how to be speakers. And for anybody who doesn't know, Les has been living with cancer for a better part of 2 decades, if not longer, um, and successfully managing it. But every once in a while, Les has a bad day. And I lived within driving distance of this event, and Les wasn't feeling good. And Gail phoned me up and she says, "How quickly can you get to Bend, Oregon?" And I was, I pull out my map. I'm like, it's about a 6 hour drive, depending on how much the border guards hate me. Why? He's like, Les isn't feeling good and we might need a backup. Like, if you come, you can hang out at the event, and if you need, if Les isn't feeling good, I'm going to need you to fill in for him. I was like, all right. She says, bring your book. I'm like, I can do that. So I phoned ahead, because Amazon, I can get the books printed through KDP and shipped really quick. Sometimes as quick as a 24-hour turnaround, especially if it's a close depot. And I had like 3 days notice for this thing. So we had 50 units of the book shipped, and I show up. Sure enough, Les is not feeling good the very last day. He did the Friday and the Saturday and half of the Sunday, and then needed to go and get uh, and deal with his health. And so I got to basically close the his training based on some instruction that I got from him, which is super cool because I two things. I get to say that Les Brown opened for me, which is a total PR spin because
That's a
I
good way to
know,
put it, though. Yeah.
yeah, I am not Les Brown, and it was actually, it was a favor to me to be able to have his audience and have that introduction. So to this day, I'm thankful to Gail and him for allowing me that opportunity. But what I did was I had the book. And so I ran the afternoon. I did my training session, worked with people, got them up on stage, was doing the stuff and interacting with them. And I gave my book to the 40 attendees that were there. One of the attendees was my publisher, and he picked it up and he looked and he was good and he's smart. He checked and he's like, so self-published, huh? I said, yeah. He goes, but would you be interested in traditional publishing? He said, I think I'd like to take on your book and see it in bookstores. And at that point I was like, well, why not? Let's do this. The downside is now I don't have that ability to just phone and get my books into a venue in 3 days. The ordering process is weeks, sometimes months now. So I really have to plan ahead, which is super frustrating for me because now I'm warehousing books. I never wanted to warehouse books. It
Yeah.
right, immediately right here, just off to my left, I have a stack of 500 units sitting right here, ready to go at any time because I might need it, and I can't be beholden to that. So that's a little bit frustrating. And it was really cool when I'd get my KDP royalties, and I'm making 70%, and now I'm making 20, and
Yeah.
that's not not as financially lucrative, especially because the book has gone from, like I said, I think it was priced originally at 28 and now it's 17.95. So,
Yeah.
you know, there are its benefits and its drawbacks, but so technically the book has been published both ways.
Well, that's good. And what you mentioned is at the beginning, you self-published and you didn't really care about book sales. That wasn't your goal. So for most people, self-publishing is kind of a way to like, let's see if I can self-publish, sell 10,000 copies in the first couple of weeks or months, and then reach out to a traditional publisher to get that book deal. That's a path that some people like to take. That was not yours. You just were able to, again, get it in front of the right person. So you created it, you put it out there, and someone took notice. So that is for anybody listening, you know, that it is a strategy that could work. If you put yourself in the right place in the right position, then it could work. So very crazy story how that all
Yeah.
seemed to play into itself. But when for you, obviously you are we could talk about public speaking and what you do in a second, but I first want to talk about your everything you said so far. Your schedule is jam-packed, nonstop. It seems like you're always kind of on the move, but you're a father, you're a husband, and you're a son. And in your
Mm-hmm.
bio, you put that you are those three above all else.
Yeah.
So for all of us, for everyone listening, we are all so incredibly busy today. You know, there's no more 40-hour work week. We're kind of all over the place. How do you manage to make sure that you are a father, a husband, and a son before all else?
Um, well, everybody has a calendar, and most, particularly if you're an entrepreneur, you're using some kind of scheduler. And for me, what I do is I schedule my family time first, and then everything else I fit around that: client meetings, interviews, speaking engagements. And the other thing is too, half the reason why I wanted and I've been pursuing this as vigorously as I have been for the last better part of a decade is the freedom that it gives me. Before my daughter was born, my wife and I got to go to Dubai and Thailand and Australia because those were where the speaking gigs were. And, so I schedule it around her vacation, or sometimes say, hey, this is when you're going to take vacation. and and
I'm
then we
sure
get to
she
go
didn't
and do
mind.
some fun things. Yeah, and same too now that my daughter is born. I mean, one of the fun things for me was I got to speak in Houston and in at Mission Control at NASA at Johnson Space Center, and the um, at the time my daughter was like 1.5, 2 years old, and she was absolutely obsessed with astronauts. Like she was just it was. I remember um, her grandpa pointing out the International Space Station as it flew over, and you could see it as a little bright dot in the sky, and him pointing it out to her and saying, there's people on that dot. And as soon as my daughter figured that out, she was researching it, and like astronauts became the thing. So when I got to go speak at the space center, I got to be like, hey, let's bring the kiddo along and she can see some of this stuff. And that is why I do what I do, so that I can have these fun adventures with my family. I actually um, just about had a gig in Guatemala coming up in May, and that was it coincided with her vacation, and so we were like, let's do that. And then the deal ended up falling through for a couple of different reasons, and my wife wasn't necessarily too impressed that I was going to take my 7-year-old daughter to Guatemala. But I was like, hey, it's a private compound, it's got security, it's fine, we'll be good. She's like, yeah, but you've got to get from the airport to the compound. I'm like, they've hired people, it'll be fine. But it ended up falling through. But that's why I do what I do. And so the secret is I schedule my family time first. These are the vacation times. Like even right now, like even if you were to look at my calendar, when I drop off my daughter for school and when I pick her up for school are slotted off in my calendar. Bedtime routine slotted off in my calendar. Our events and the things when we hang out slotted off in my calendar, and then I fit everything else around it.
That's very important. I do the same thing as well. When the kids come home from school, when it's a little bit chaotic in the background, I make sure that I have, an hour or two to how was your day, check their folders and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
that is very important because it your schedule, if you let it just stay open, it can easily, especially with the software, calendar scheduling software, people can just jump in your schedule, on a whim, and that takes away from family time, like you said. But I love the story of your daughter and the astronaut. That's so cool. And just to be able, as a father, to be able to bring her there and see the joy in her eyes was probably far better
Oh,
than the money that you received for that
yeah,
project.
yeah. That's the thing. I don't even remember how much I got paid for the gig, but I distinctly remember the joy
Yeah,
that she experienced going through it. So,
I can imagine. So Tyler, where can people, obviously you know what you're doing, you know your craft, and you help other people to get on stage and to really, own themselves on stage. So where can people, authors who are listening, nonfiction authors who are listening, who have that book and now they're looking for more speaking engagements to really own that craft, where can they find you and work with you?
well, I'm first thing they can do is probably check the show notes, John, and if they're listening to self-published success for on a repeated effort, obviously they've come to this episode, so something has brought them to your show. So before they even come on and check out my platform, they're already on your platform, and I would strongly encourage them, if they haven't yet, to give you a 5-star review. And why? Like, what about self-published success are they enjoying? What brings them back to your episode? Maybe what was one of their favorite guests, or what was one of their favorite takeaways? What's some of the value that you've provided to them? And that will do a couple of things. It's going to help them because now um, you will know what content they're consuming and what they enjoy the most. And that can help you replicate that and get more guests like that on. It'll help you because now we're going to rank a little bit higher because we've got some 5-star reviews and we've got written feedback, which is always helps with the algorithm. And then it's going to help me because if your show is popular, then me as a guest on your show will be a little bit more popular. So if your listeners right now can do me a favor and just hit pause, because you're going to go and check the show notes anyways. Hit pause before you scroll down to the show notes. There's those nice little 5 stars there. Click the fifth one and then leave a little bit of a review for John, and be specific. What about self-published success are you enjoying? And be detailed. And if they're willing to do that, then if they click on the show notes and come to my website, which is SeanTylerFoley.com, and Sean is spelled the proper Irish way, SeanTylerFoley, just like Connery. If they come to SeanTylerFoley.com, right above the fold, first thing they're going to see is an invitation to join my private Facebook group, Endless Stages. They can come through Mark Zuckerberg's site and get to it the same way that they can get to it through my site. But they come through my site instead of Mark's, they're going to get on my mailing list, which means they're going to get a free PDF download of The Power to Speak Naked, so they don't have to spend the $17.95 at Chapters or Indigo or wherever they're buying their literary material. They can get it for free. They're also going to get access to my Drop the Mic speaker training program. It's a really simple introductory to me and my training and what I am and about and what I do. It's 7 5-minute videos, so you can consume it in a week. It's under 35 minutes, 5 minutes a day. It'll make you a better public speaker, give you some really good actionable tips and tricks to increase your stage presence, be more confident on stage, tell your story in a more powerful way. And you'll have access, obviously, to the private Facebook group where I do a private training every Tuesday at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern. And so that's my gift to your audience, but only if they're willing to give you a 5-star review, John. No 5-star review, no book for you.
Well, it's clear that we heard through, the first 30 or so minutes of the episode, all your different talents and what you're good at. And now we see that you're also good at helping to promote other people's podcasts. So very, very much appreciated on that end. And anyone listening, yes, please do leave a review and then please go to Tyler's site. It's been so evident, so clear that he can help and especially if just 5 minutes a day for 7 days. I mean, we can all take that to make sure that we improve ourselves and our potential to make that speaker money that people are out there making. Keynote speaking is huge, and it can make a lot of money and can really make an impact as well. So anyone listening, yeah, please follow Tyler's direction. Tyler, again, thank you. This has been an amazing episode, and we very, very much appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me on, John.